This tournament seems to have a way of leaving damage behind. Just a few days ago, it claimed its first victim before the knockout stage had even begun. Tunisia dismissed their head coach right in the middle of the World Cup. A decision born from confusion, pressure, and panic. We already covered that story. It felt unusual. It felt harsh. Then, on June 18th in Vancouver, the World Cup claimed another victim entirely. This time, there was no boardroom meeting and no official statement. Instead, it happened on the pitch in front of a sold-out crowd during what was meant to be the greatest night Canadian soccer had ever experienced. His name is Ismael Kone, and to understand why an entire nation suddenly fell silent during a 6-0 victory, you need to know exactly what happened. First, consider the circumstances, because they make the story even more painful. This was Canada's moment. 4 decades after their first World Cup appearance, they were dismantling Qatar in Vancouver, playing at home in front of a roaring crowd while closing in on their first ever World Cup win. They were already leading 3-0. Jonathan David was on course for a hat trick, the first by a player representing a host nation at a World Cup since Jeff Hurst accomplished the feat in 1966. Qatar had already been reduced to 10 men. Everything was going exactly as planned. Then, 8 minutes into the second half, in the 51st minute, everything changed. Canada were pushing forward when Kone received the ball. As he attempted to make a play, Qatar's Ahmed Fathi Medbo arrived late with a heavy challenge from behind. What happened next was the kind of sound nobody ever wants to hear inside a football stadium. Players nearby later said they could hear the bone break. Canada manager Jesse Marsh was standing only a few yards away, and afterward, he described it in simple terms. It was right in front of us, and everyone could hear it. Kone looked down at his leg, and television cameras captured the shock on his face as he realized the severity of the injury. His leg was visibly broken. One of Canada's assistant coaches began shouting toward the referee, and within seconds, one of the loudest crowds in the tournament had gone completely quiet. What followed revealed a lot about the people involved. Kone's teammates rushed over to him, not only out of concern but also out of frustration, angry about the nature of the tackle. Tensions quickly boiled over, and a confrontation broke out between the benches. Medbo stood nearby with his hands on his head. And in the middle of all that chaos, while lying on a stretcher and receiving oxygen, Ismael Kone did something remarkable. He gave the crowd a thumbs up, then he waved. As Jesse Marsh later explained, Kone was trying to make everyone else feel comfortable, even though he was the one suffering the injury. The manager called it an incredible reflection of who he is as a person. He embraced his coach, he waved to the supporters, and he let an entire country know that it was okay to keep going. And they did keep going, because there was no other choice. 10 minutes after the match restarted, Nathan Saliba, the substitute brought on for Ismael Kone, curled home a free kick. But instead of celebrating the goal, he was handed something from the sideline. It was a number 8 shirt, Kone's shirt. Saliba lifted it toward the crowd, and in that moment, one of the most memorable images of the entire World Cup was created. During a hydration break later in the match, cameras caught Jesse Marsh fighting back tears. Meanwhile, goalkeeper Maxime Crépeau, a player who suffered a devastating broken leg of his own and missed the 2022 World Cup because of it, was seen comforting his teammate on the field. His message was simple: "You're not alone." But we still have a job to finish for him. Canada eventually completed a dominant 6-0 victory, but by then, the scoreline hardly felt important anymore. So who exactly is Ismael Kone? If you're outside Canada, there's a good chance you don't know much about him. But you probably should. Kone is 24 years old. He was born in Abidjan, Ivory Coast, before moving to Montreal at the age of 7 to reunite with his mother. He developed through Quebec's local soccer system, progressed through the CF Montreal Academy, and signed his first professional contract in 2021. From that point, his rise came quickly. A club record transfer to Watford in England was followed by a move to Marseille in France, a loan spell at Rennes, and eventually a permanent switch to Sassuolo in Italy's Serie A. Before even reaching his mid-20s, he had already played across 4 major European leagues. On the international stage, he earned more than 40 appearances for Canada and represented his country at both the 2022 and 2026 World Cups. On the field, he is the heartbeat of the team. A true box-to-box midfielder, he carries the ball through pressure, links defense to attack, and drives Canada forward from the center of the pitch. Marsh put it best himself when he admitted there is no direct replacement for him. In the manager's words, Kone is a huge part of the heart of this squad. And after the match, his teammates weren't talking about his statistics or his technical ability. They were talking about him as a person. Alistair Johnston described him as a laid-back young player who simply loves football. The kind of teammate who would happily stay up all night playing two-touch with the rest of the squad. Johnston said that's exactly why it was so painful to watch him suffer such a serious injury from a challenge that felt completely unnecessary. Jonathan David, despite scoring the historic hat trick, found little joy in the achievement afterward. "He means everything to this team," David said. "He's someone we love a lot." Moise Bombito, who had only recently recovered from a broken leg himself, kept his message short and direct. "We just have to make him proud." At least there was one small positive in the aftermath. Before Canada left for the hospital, Ahmed Fathi Medbo entered the dressing room to apologize. Both managers agreed the incident was an accident and that nobody intended for such a severe injury to happen. Marsh made it clear that he did not blame Medbo for the injury itself. What frustrated him was the reaction from the Qatar bench, which argued that the challenge should not even have resulted in a red card, despite the fact that it had ended with a player suffering a broken leg. The tension remained throughout the rest of the evening and even carried into the final whistle, where the two managers shared a noticeably cold exchange. But Marsh had little interest in focusing on that. His attention was somewhere else entirely. He even cut his own press conference short so he could be at the hospital with Kone and his family as the midfielder prepared to undergo surgery. And that is the harsh reality of football, the harsh reality of a tournament like this. Ismael Kone's World Cup journey is over. After years of hard work, after playing across multiple leagues, after traveling from Abidjan to Montreal, and eventually reaching the biggest stage in world football, his tournament came to an end on a stretcher during what should have been the greatest night in Canadian soccer history. Canada, meanwhile, are now in a strong position to reach the knockout stage, and when they do, they'll carry Kone's spirit with them. Alistair Johnston summed it up perfectly. It's given us another reason to play for him. This week, the World Cup claimed another victim, not a manager this time, a 24-year-old player who simply wanted to represent his country. A young man who, despite being the one in pain, still found the strength to wave to an entire nation that was hurting alongside him. Get well soon, Ismael. Canada is standing behind you. And truthfully, so is everyone else watching. If you'd like to send your support to Ismael, leave a message in the comments below. I read every single one. Dropping a like also helps this story reach more people. And if you enjoy World Cup coverage that focuses on the people behind the shirts and the score lines, consider subscribing, because football at this level has never been only about the tournament itself. Moments like this remind us of what truly matters.